You aren't ready. And truth be told, neither was I. I had a conversation with a relative about, I would say, like a day or two ago. And it brought the question about what would have happened had I started YouTube first, before the whole Embassy Life in DC challenge stuff that I started about a year and some change ago, or even like 5 or 10 years ago. And you could always use the question like, what if I would have done this? What if I would have started that? What if I would have done this? And the thing with that is that not only does that torture yourself mentally, but it also puts you in a state of comparison where you are constantly looking at what other people are doing and then kind of blaming yourself for not kind of noticing like a pattern or a trend that you could have capitalized on, and then that would have probably benefited you in the current state now if you don't like your circumstances. So it's a great question. Like with the YouTube channel, for example, I'm doing all these like different forms of like content with like travel that I recently like started getting into a little bit more. These chat style videos where I talk about these different types of questions, and then the educational content about how to teach people to create a community around a hobby that they love doing, and then hopefully monetize it down the road, being a creative synthesizer. I think that that's the updated name of the playlist. But back to the question about what would have happened had I started YouTube, let's say like a year ago first, instead of like the Embassy Life in DC project, or even like 5 years ago when I was still in grad school at the time, and I wasn't even in the DC area, I was in Santa Barbara, California. See, that's very interesting because I feel like I've become my own person as I've grown up. Like, for example, I'm 28, right? And I think about the person that I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it's two different completely personalities almost. Not to say that I have like, schizophrenia or like multi personality disorder, although you never know. Might explain a lot. I'm just joking. But the thing is that like you grow over time, right? And as you grow into the person that you're meant to become, you also have an increased level of maturity, wisdom, and experience that just is a byproduct of life in general. And so I've noticed that about myself, where, for example, had I started YouTube, like let's say maybe like 5 years ago in grad school, it was a completely different Nate at that point in time. I was like in the trenches trying to get my master's degree. I was obsessed with trying to prove myself to everyone around me because like at the time I was 23, I believe, when I started grad school, which is like very young because the average age of the person in our master's program was at least in their 30s. So I was, below the average age, and I didn't even have that much like life experience at that point either. Like I still don't, but I have a little bit more now compared to what I used to have. But it's like had I started a YouTube channel when I was in Santa Barbara, California, like in grad school, like trying to study and like trying to make friends and trying to overcome my sense of inferiority compared to all these great people that I was surrounding myself with, I wouldn't have approached the YouTube channel with the same amount of zeal that I do today, and just the same level of maybe motivation and commitment to try to keep it going, even though it's only been 2 months, which I know it's very short, but you gotta give me credit where credit's due. I have been posting consistently since I started this YouTube channel. I've been experimenting with different forms of content. Okay, we're not the biggest channel in the world, but I don't want it to be. I would rather have a small audience that constantly comments on all of my videos than a large audience with people that don't even really care and just follow me for the sake of following me. So had I started my YouTube channel like 5 years ago as an example, I would have maybe posted once every 2 months, because like you know how life is. Priorities change. You try to find new activities and you go on camping trips, and I'm sure I would have made it work at the end of the day, but at the same time it wouldn't have been the same style of content, and then it wouldn't have been the same attitude, if that kind of makes sense. So like 5 years ago, I was a completely different person, and hopefully you were too, because if you're not growing over time, then that means that you're doing something wrong, or at least that's how I interpret life just in general. So what my relative said to me was very interesting, and that correlates with what I said at the beginning of the video with "you're not ready," and neither was I. Where 5 years ago, I wasn't ready to start a YouTube channel and talk about like existential questions of life and talk about travel content, because I just didn't have the Embassy Life in DC part of my life to even contemplate doing that, if that kind of makes sense. Like one feeds into the other. You'll notice that like on my shorts and stuff like that, I post nothing but Embassy Life in DC content because A, it saves me time, and B, travel is something that I want to build more of when it comes to this channel, even though the content sucks, frankly. But hey, I'm learning, okay? You gotta give me credit at least. But it's like, now is the right time for me to do all this stuff because like with my personal life right now, it's like I have my work with my day job, which I do, right? Um, that pays the bills and that makes sure that I have like a main career to go back to if I ever want to go to that, you know what I mean? I have a roof over my head, life is good, I can focus my spare time into hobbies just like this. So now is the perfect time to start a YouTube channel and to spend egregious amounts of time, filming content, trying new things, seeing what works with all of y'all as an audience, what doesn't work, you know what I mean? And like people aren't gonna stick around and that's fine. I'm perfectly content with that. I strongly believe that like if you follow someone, you follow them because of the wide interests that you share a commonality with and not for the sake of following. But then again, I could be slightly naive when it comes to that. So for me personally, now is the right time to start this YouTube channel because it's a second creative project. It feeds into my primary project, which is Embassy Life in DC, and just it's a positive feedback cycle when it comes to content creation and just trying everything out. So had I would have started it like 5 years ago, again, not the right time. The priorities were different. Life was different. I was a different person. And then like 10 years ago, I would have maybe started it maybe one day on a whim and then I would have forgotten about it. High school, don't even. High school Nate was very different. Like in some ways similar, like the same personality traits of being like, a geek and a nerd and stuff like that with like sci-fi and stuff like that, like transfer over. But in terms of personality, I'm like more mature. I'm more wise, which is like life and what I want, who I am as a man and stuff like that, as a person, with my priorities in my life, what I really want to spend my time on. And so like 10 years ago, being 17, 18 years old, your brain isn't fully developed, you're immature as heck. My God, the stuff that I was doing when I was 18, it's not completely outlandish, but just like the personality and like what you find funny and like what you do, very different compared to like now. But in some respects, still similar. So it's kind of an oxymoron at the same time. But my point is this, is that if you are trying to find the perfect time to start a YouTube channel or to start a new hobby, to maybe get into working out, that type of thing, you would be surprised at how much you torture yourself over those what if questions. Whereas like, what if I started 10 years ago? What if I started 5 years ago? What if I would have started a year ago? There's a reason why you didn't. And the reason why is because simply you weren't ready. That's the thing. Like taking the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel right now as an example, and then also my Embassy Life in DC project, heck, even working out. I started those at different points in my life because I was ready to do so. And because of circumstances in my surrounding environment and my internal environment with what was going on in my mind, what I wanted out of my life, etc., all of that came together and eventually that builds to the catalyst of you wanting to start something. So the reason why you didn't do or start anything in the past was because simply you weren't ready to do so. And that's a realization that I came to realize like just after I talked with my relative like yesterday. I was like, well, for example, there's another member of our family that like has a YouTube channel. I forget like what it is, but they've been doing it for like a long time. Like they've been doing it since their high school years, right? And then I was wondering about that, and I remember everyone kind of making fun of him a little bit for like wanting to be a YouTube star, because at the time it wasn't that common, right? Like it was just like, oh, it's just an outlandish dream. Yeah, and then like 5 to 10 years later, the kid makes so much money that it's honestly, frankly, ridiculous. But he worked super hard to get to that point over 5 to 10 years when some people believed in him, others didn't. The majority said it was a pipe dream, you should go to school instead. And he went back to school afterwards and stuff like that. But to see what he did was inspiring to me, like, and in this, current time frame, because the irony was that I was one of those people that, when he was doing his YouTube grind, and I think he still does it. I forget, like, if he's even as active as he was before, because he's got different priorities. I remember being one of those people that thought that YouTube was just a pipe dream, right? Like, it's impossible to build an audience and to, like, make money from online, and you have to pursue the traditional 9 to 5 job and stuff like that. And you still can. There's nothing wrong with that, like I pointed out before in previous videos. But I see that, right? I see him, and then I see other examples of other YouTube accounts that I follow, and I'm like, well, what if I could do that? Like, my dream life is to make some money off of the AdSense from YouTube and potential partnerships, and then potential partnerships through the Embassy Life in DC project as well, and then also probably like having like a part-time remote job, and all of that can be done from wherever in the wide world. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to be necessarily in DC to do all 3 of those things. I could travel if I wanted to. I could film videos if I'm on the road. That would be such an amazing life to lead, and not to say that my life right now isn't interesting. On the contrary, it is. But at the same time, it's like, that's the dream that I'm building towards, and that's why, like, I'm trying to be on my YouTube grind as much as I can, and I'm trying to experiment, because, like, I really believe that I can make YouTube into something, because there are so many resources out there that, like, for example, Ali Abdal, I don't know if you all know him, but, like, he's a productivity channel, and he's got like 5 million subscribers on YouTube over the course of 10 years being built up to that moment. But he's got like a part-time YouTuber academy that I sometimes like watch, and initially I was going to do it, and I was like, you know what, that's a pipe dream. That was me like back in January. And then one weekend, I just didn't have anything to do, and I was like, like, what if I did a YouTube channel, and I like took it seriously for a year, and I saw where it could bring me in the future, as a companion to the Embassy Life in DC project. At first I thought it was like a stupid idea, and then I like did it, and I was like, it's actually kind of fun talking to a camera, even though no one may be like listening, but just seeing people like comment on my videos like day in and day out, even though it's a small number of people, makes me really happy, because it means that like some people resonate with what I have to say. And as someone that has a lot of self-confidence issues, I take those comments like, really dear to me. And like, I really appreciate it when people like say to me, like, your content's awesome, keep going, don't give up, you're an awesome person. It's like a lot of yes people out there, but at the same time, it means something, because like in a world where everyone seems to be at the top of their game with like social media and just like their life and stuff like that, just having those like rare moments of vulnerability, I believe like what makes my channel, at least like in some ways, like not better, but just like more authentic than like some of the other videos that you might see out there. So in regards to why you didn't start a YouTube channel 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even a year ago, it's because you weren't ready, and neither was I. I didn't have the temperament, the mentality, the life experience, or just the simple attitude to want to do something like this. And now in this current time frame, I see what happens with the Embassy Life in DC project. Like, I kid you not, like, it's taken a year and progress has been slow. But to be fair, embassy and cultural events are a very specific niche. It's very location specific, and not everyone's into that. But after a year, it went from 0 to we're at 6,000 followers on Instagram. Granted, we had people talk about us, and that's why it's grown, but that's part of the process. So, after a year, there was undeniable growth. And that made me so happy, because like no one thinks about going to an embassy event if you're not in the DC area. Like, what do you care if you're watching from New York or anywhere else in the world? But just to see that growth over a straight year of consistent effort makes me like really happy. And so like with this YouTube channel, I hope to kind of have the same thing. Maybe, if it's to the same size, great. At 6,000 subs on YouTube, that's even better. But even if there is like some minor growth, which there has been over the past like 2 months, it's enough to make me want to continue going. And just like the constant comments and the encouragement it's amazing, and it means a lot to me. I hope you get that sense, through the camera, the phone camera that I use and stuff like that. And why you didn't start is because you didn't have the attitude, mentality, temperament, or just life experience to even want to do it in the first place. And I believe that that just doesn't apply to starting a YouTube channel. That applies to literally anything in life. Like, they often say, like, you can't lead a horse to drink water, I think is as the saying goes, or something like that. But unless you really want to do it, you're not going to start, which is often the hardest part, and then maintaining it afterwards is kind of the easier part. So keep that in mind as you approach many different things throughout your lives, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what your circumstances are. Always remember that even if you didn't start in the past, you can start now, but you have to have the temperament and the mindset to do so, as cliche as that sounds. Follow and like for more as I cover more existential questions like this through the Life with Nate channel, and look forward to more content in the future. Have a great day or night wherever you are.